For decades, Prince Edward has lived in the shadows of the throne, known as the most silent of Queen Elizabeth II's children. No scandals, no controversial statements. He has long been the model of unwavering loyalty to the crown. While storms raged around the royal family, from the explosive divorce of Charles and Diana to Prince Andrew's searing controversies, Edward remained silent, a steady wall shielding royal secrets from the public eye. But now, everything has changed. At 61, when many believed he would take those secrets to the grave, Prince Edward had suddenly broken his silence. And the subject he has chosen to speak about is the most forbidden of all Princess Diana. Not praise, not soft recollections, but shocking revelations. One's already being called bad news by those who have long revered the late princess. Why would a man so loyal choose now to speak? Has something weighed on his conscience all these years? Or have the secrets hidden behind palace curtains become too heavy for him to bear? What truth has pushed the quietest prince to speak at last, and are we truly ready for what he has to reveal? While the world fixated on the tragic romance between Diana and Charles, few ever turned their gaze toward a quieter, more discreet, but equally explosive connection between Princess Diana and Prince Edward, Charles's younger brother. It wasn't a romance, nor was it a public rivalry. It was something else entirely. A strange, silent understanding between two people who had been trapped inside a royal institution that suffocated emotions and rewarded silence. From the very beginning of Diana's entry into royal life, Edward watched it all unfold. He saw the cold glances, the unanswered phone calls, the formal ceremonies where Diana was forced to smile through tears. Edward wasn't like Charles. He wasn't aloof, nor was he burdened with the arrogance of royalty. He was the only one who gently asked, "Are you okay, Diana?" And with that question, a quiet door opened between them. They didn't see each other often, but when they did, their eye contact carried something unspoken. A former royal staff member once revealed, when Diana entered the room, Edward was always the only one who stood up and walked toward her. It wasn't just courtesy, it was something deeper. He listened to her, something Charles had never done, and in letters never made public. It's rumored that Diana once wrote, "Edward understands me in a way Charles never cared to." That closeness did not go unnoticed. In fact, Charles grew suspicious. At a private gathering at Balmoral, Charles allegedly confronted his brother. "Why are you siding with her? Can't you see she's tearing this family apart?" Edward said nothing. He simply left the room, not out of defeat, but out of silent defiance to protect a woman who was slowly breaking down. Then came the darkest moment, Diana's untimely death in that horrific car crash in 1997. According to witnesses, the only royal who cried openly was not Charles, not even young William. It was Edward. He quietly flew to Paris, to the very site of the crash, and requested to see Diana's body before it was returned to the UK. The palace never disclosed this, but those close to the family know it happened. After Diana's death, Edward became more withdrawn. He declined interviews and avoided events that brought up her name. But royal watchers knew this wasn't about forgetting. It was a grief that had no place in the royal script. And perhaps this is why he always kept a visible distance from Camilla, the woman he quietly blamed for Diana's pain. At Charles and Camilla's wedding, it is said that Edward was the last to sign the guest book. His message was brief and cutting. "May your happiness not come at the cost of others." A phrase that sent shockwaves through the palace corridors, but was buried deep until recently, when Edward, now 61, finally broke his silence. In a private conversation with a trusted source, Prince Edward reportedly said, his voice trembling, "She didn't deserve any of it. Not loneliness, not the betrayal. She was more royal than any of us." A confession that shocked those present, because it came from a man who had always been seen as the monarchy's quiet loyalist. And from that moment, secrets once buried began to bubble to the surface. People started asking the unthinkable. Was Edward and Diana's bond more than empathy? Was there something deeper that had to be silenced to protect the royal image? And if so, is that hidden truth the very thing that could bring the entire facade of royal perfection crumbling down? Whatever the case, one thing is clear. In the whirlwind of Diana's life, Edward was her silent anchor, a brother-in-law who didn't just see her pain, but carried it with her, protected her in silence, and preserved her memory like a sacred relic. Now that he has dared to break his long silence, we are left with one pressing question. Is this only the beginning of a much larger truth that's waiting to erupt? A truth that might force the rewriting of royal history not with fairy tales, but with the raw, heartbreaking reality that was never meant to be told. The royal family, for as long as anyone could remember, lived by one strict rule: to always stay in control of how people see you. Their image was carefully built on being private, polished, and far removed from emotional messiness. There was an old saying they followed like law: never complain or even explain. That wasn't just a motto, it was a shield that protected them for generations. They chose what the world could see and kept everything else behind closed doors. Then came Diana. From the moment she joined the family, things began to shift. She was young, filled with light, and had a way of connecting with people that no royal ever had before. While most of the family members kept their feelings hidden behind perfect smiles, Diana wore her heart on her sleeve. She cried when she was overwhelmed. She spoke honestly about what hurt her, and she didn't pretend things were okay when they weren't. And in doing so, she showed the public something they'd never seen before: a royal who felt like one of them. She allowed people to look behind the palace walls and see the reality beneath the tradition. She showed that even those with crowns and titles could feel pain, struggle with love, and battle loneliness. Without raising her voice, Diana changed the way people looked at the monarchy. And all the while, by stems, Prince Edward was there, quietly taking it all in. He never chased the spotlight, but he was there through it all, watching closely as Diana's courage and vulnerability reshaped the royal world in ways no one had expected. Prince Edward never stepped into the middle of the royal family's struggles, but that didn't mean he wasn't paying attention. He quietly observed from the background as Diana's presence slowly turned the entire royal world upside down. Her growing popularity hit the palace like a sudden storm. The royals had never faced someone like her before. She was expected to be the quiet support beside Prince Charles, but instead she became the star. Everywhere she went, people cheered her name with joy. Photographers never stopped following her and even powerful leaders seemed more interested in meeting Diana than in meeting the rest of the royals. With every appearance, her influence grew stronger. But behind the scenes, things weren't so bright. Inside the palace walls, pressure began to rise. The spotlight, which once belonged to the monarchy as a whole, shifted almost completely to Diana. And that shift created serious tension. The royal family had always operated in a world of strict rules and quiet traditions. They kept personal struggles hidden and expected everyone within the family to do the same. They resisted change, held tightly to old customs, and avoided emotional expression in public. But Diana didn't follow that path. She opened up about her pain. She bravely admitted how isolated she felt, and she spoke about the overwhelming weight of being royal, something no one had dared say before. And because of her honesty, the public adored her even more. Prince Edward, calm as always, watched everything unfold. He noticed how the royal family struggled to keep up, while Diana's openness connected her to the people in ways the royals couldn't. Her truth didn't just reveal her struggles, it exposed how out of touch the monarchy had become. For generations, the family had carefully shaped how the world saw them. They kept their image polished and distant. But Diana couldn't be managed or contained. Her sincerity, the very thing that made people fall in love with her, also became the biggest threat to the old royal system. She made people feel something real, something personal, and that made her much more than just a difficult royal. It made her a challenge to everything the monarchy had built over the years. The harder they tried to silence her or limit her, the more it became obvious that their grip on the public's trust was slipping. At that time, Edward never said a word about what was happening. He remained quiet, choosing to observe rather than get involved. But he saw everything, every moment, every shift. And when he finally spoke about those years much later, it became clear just how deeply Diana had changed things. She hadn't just stirred the royal waters, she changed the way people viewed the entire monarchy. From the side, Edward saw how Diana's presence both shielded the royal family from complete disconnection and also forced them to face a truth they could no longer avoid. She reshaped their world forever, and Edward quietly watched it all happen. Diana did something that had never been seen in royal history. She made people feel that the crown wasn't just a symbol, but something real and warm. For as long as anyone could remember, the royal family stayed hidden behind layers of rules, distance, and quiet dignity. They weren't supposed to appear like regular people with feelings and flaws. They were meant to represent tradition, stability, and history. But Diana changed that idea completely. She didn't hide behind guards or gates. She was soft, open-hearted, and never afraid to show affection in public. Rather than simply waving from a distance, she stepped into the crowd, smiled at strangers, touched their hands, and met their eyes with warmth. That gentle closeness felt new and special. She brought the royal world down to earth, closer to the everyday person, and people felt connected to her like never before. But what seemed beautiful to the public felt dangerous inside the palace. This shift wasn't taken lightly. It shook the royal family to its core. No one in the royal household had ever been so naturally loved, so personally connected to the outside world. Diana didn't do her duties like it was a job. Everything she did came from deep within her heart. She didn't just show up to official gatherings. She visited hospital beds when others were too scared to go. When the world feared AIDS and avoided those suffering, Diana reached out to them, touched their hands, embraced them. She walked into places filled with landmines, not for show, but to raise awareness and fight for those forgotten in conflict zones. She didn't seek attention. She acted because she truly cared. The world saw this, and they adored her. She wasn't just a royal figure. She became a symbol of compassion across nations. She made the royal family feel human and alive again. But behind palace walls, her fame and influence were starting to cause unease. The monarchy had stayed strong through centuries by keeping emotions locked away and their private lives protected. Diana's openness, her tears, in her voice, these things went against everything the family believed in. She was not easy to predict. She said what she felt, she cried when she was sad, and she even allowed the world to see the woman behind the title. That honesty was powerful, but it also made the royal family uncomfortable. They preferred quiet, not questions. They valued control, not raw emotion. Prince Edward, though, seemed to quietly understand her in a way others didn't. He recognized that Diana wasn't just a princess. She was someone who had captured the hearts of millions around the world. Edward didn't try to interfere or shut her down. He stayed on the sidelines, saying nothing, while others tried to protect the royal image by pushing her into silence. He watched as she struggled to follow palace rules while still holding on to her freedom, but that balance didn't last. In trying to remain true to herself, Diana slowly found herself worn out. Her strength, her independence, was also what hurt her most. She couldn't force herself to play the part of a quiet, smiling royal. She opened up about her pain and let people see what life behind the royal curtain really looked like. But the family wasn't prepared for that kind of openness. They didn't know how to respond to such realness. And so, it leaves us all with one important question. Did Diana's way of doing things help the monarchy grow, Or did it tear it apart? Well, keep watching to discover the answer. The role Diana played, many people believe Diana gave the royal family a second chance. For she entered the scene, interest in the monarchy was slowly fading. To the public, they had begun to look like something from the past, stiff, unreachable, and stuck in their old ways. But when Diana came along, everything changed. She brought a new energy, a gentle glow that pulled people back in. She made the royals feel important again, and whether they liked it or not, she dragged them into a new chapter of history. Her presence didn't just draw attention, it opened eyes. Some even believe she uncovered their truths that the royal family had quietly hidden away. When Diana began to speak openly about the pain she faced within the palace, she peeled back the curtain. The world began to see that behind the diamonds and golden halls was a place that felt cold, closed off, and unwilling to bend. That truth hit hard and stayed with people, even now, long after her time. The royal family is still trying to fix the damage that started with her truth-telling. Prince Edward didn't speak much during all of this. He wasn't the next king like Charles, and he wasn't bold like Diana, who wasn't afraid to challenge centuries of tradition. But Edward was there. He saw everything unfold right in front of him. He never gave public opinions or appeared on television to share his thoughts, but that didn't mean he was unaware. He chose silence. Yet, from the background, he was quietly watching the royal image start to crack long before the rest of the world caught on. Then came the moment that stopped time. On August 31st, 1990, terrible news swept across the world. Princess Diana had passed away in a car accident in Paris. It was sudden, it was heartbreaking, and it felt impossible to believe. People came out in large numbers, filled with sadness and disbelief. Through the night, candles were lit on sidewalks outside her home at Kensington Palace. Flowers kept piling up. The world mourned deeply. Though many had never met her, it felt as if someone very dear had been taken away. Diana wasn't just a royal name. She was a symbol of warmth, of hope, of someone who wanted to make a difference. And now she is gone. The heartbreak was overwhelming. But while the streets overflowed with sorrow, something strange was happening behind the palace doors. The royal family stayed completely quiet. Their silence shocked the world. People everywhere were waiting to see just one tear, one sign of sorrow from the royal household. But nothing came. No speeches, no public appearance. Not even the flag at Buckingham Palace was lowered. The family kept to themselves, locked inside, still holding tightly to old customs and formality. In a world now craving openness and emotion, that silence felt cold and deeply out of place. The traditions they held on to so tightly now looked out of touch. And in this moment, their refusal to show feeling only made things worse. The public had changed, and the royal family hadn't. People couldn't hold back their anger. They wanted answers. Why wasn't the Queen saying anything? Why hadn't Charles spoken up? Did they feel anything at all? The public's frustration grew louder by the minute. Headlines slammed the royals. Famous figures began to speak out against them. Even those who had always stood by the monarchy started to question whether the royal family had grown too far apart from the people they were meant to lead. Yet, through all the noise and chaos, Prince Edward remained silent. And deep inside, he was hurting, but he never showed it. He wasn't Diana's husband like Charles. He wasn't her child like William or Harry. But he had been close enough to see her struggles. As her brother-in-law, he had quietly witnessed her pain in a way others may not have. Still, he said nothing. His silence held more emotion than any public speech. And by the time the Queen finally addressed the nation, the damage had already been done. The long wait had left a deep wound. The quiet from the palace had spoken volumes louder than any speech ever could. That silence showed a version of the royals that people couldn't forget. They seemed cold, out of touch, and lost in their own world. And just like Diana's brave honesty had shaken things up before, this moment of silence left its mark too. Diana's passing became the moment the royal family could no longer avoid change. Her death became a turning point. Suddenly, the usual quiet and reserved way of doing things wasn't enough. People wanted to see the emotions, not tradition. They wanted the royals to feel what the world was feeling. It was no longer acceptable to act like nothing had happened. That painful loss forced the monarchy to rethink everything. They had to open up. They had to show the world they were human too. While the family tried to repair its image and learn to connect with the public again, Edward stayed in the background. He never stepped forward. He didn't go on television or write anything. He never shared his feelings or told the world how Diana's passing had touched his heart. But he watched it all happen, the grief, the anger, the royal family's slow change. Yet he kept his thoughts locked away. He never said how he really felt about the palace's cold silence or how the public outrage swept through like a storm that wouldn't stop. For years, Edward chose to stay in the shadows, offering nothing but silence. Still, the world never stopped speaking about Diana. People remembered her kindness, her strength, her pain, and how she tried to bring change. Her story stayed alive. Interviews, films, and books kept bringing her back into conversations. The way she was treated by the palace still left people feeling uneasy. Her memories sparked emotions that never seemed to fade. And through all of it, Edward never once gave his side. He stayed invisible until this very moment. Would you like to hear what he finally said? Keep watching. The shocking revelations about Princess Diana. For many years, Prince Edward has finally come forward, caught everyone off guard. Unlike the usual polished and careful messages we often hear from members of the royal family, Edward didn't try to defend the crown or smooth over the past. His words didn't sound rehearsed. He wasn't trying to protect anyone or soften the truth. Instead, he spoke in a raw, honest way that gave people a rare and personal view into what really happened behind the walls of the palace. He admitted something that many people had quietly believed for a long time, that Princess Diana never truly belonged in the royal world. He said the system wasn't made to accept someone like her. Diana's warm heart, her openness, and the way she wore her emotions on her sleeve were seen by the institution as weaknesses, not strengths. She didn't face rejection because of who she was as a person, but because the system wasn't ready for someone so real. Her deep loneliness wasn't just something that happened. It was the result of how the royal machine worked around her. Now people are asking, why is Edward speaking up now? After all these years of keeping quiet, many believe it's not just a coincidence. Right now, the royal family is under pressure again. Younger voices are questioning whether the monarchy still has a place in today's world. The same kinds of problems that once surrounded Diana are being brought up once more. And her memory is right in the middle of it all. Edward's words don't feel like they're just looking back at the past. They feel like a quiet answer to the questions people are asking today. What makes Edward's message feel different is that it doesn't sound like the others. When Charles talks about Diana, his tone is always formal and careful, never digging too deep. William honors his mother with love and respect, but he keeps her story separate from the role he's preparing for as the future king. Even Harry, who speaks with deep emotion and isn't afraid to challenge the system, always shares from the pain he carries as her son. But Edward, he isn't coming from that place. Edward doesn't seem to want attention or sympathy. He's not trying to improve his public image or prove anything. There's a quietness in the way he speaks, a steady tone that feels real and thoughtful. And in just a few short comments, he confirmed something people had felt in their hearts for years, that Diana's hurt didn't come just from her personal life, but from the rigid walls the royal structure had built around her. Edward's quiet honesty is now shaking the royal family in ways no one expected. His words have sparked new questions about what else might have been hidden behind the royal image that always looks so perfect from the outside. What he said doesn't just bring back the pain of the past. It's causing real ripples right now. Prince Edward's remarks have gone far beyond old memories. They've reopened wounds that the royal family never fully healed. And even though his words were calm and carefully chosen, they forced the monarchy to look again at one of its most painful private chapters. For a long time, the royal family has worked hard to change how the public sees them. They've tried to move far away from the pain and scandals tied to Princess Diana's life and heartbreaking death. They wanted to rebuild their image, to show a different side, one that wasn't tangled in sadness or old mistakes. But now, with Prince Edward finally breaking his silence, all that careful planning may be starting to unravel. Inside the palace, reactions to his words haven't been the same. Some are unsettled, and some are deeply hurt. And one of the most affected is King Charles. Charles, now wearing the crown, is said to be shaken to his core. The past is not something he can easily escape. His history with Diana still casts a heavy shadow over him, a chapter many see as one of the most painful failures in royal history. Edward's comments have stirred up old memories, decisions Charles once made that changed Diana's life and deeply damaged how the world views the monarchy. For him, this isn't just about history being discussed again, it's about wounds that never truly closed, feelings that still linger just beneath the surface. Prince William, next in line for the throne, now finds himself caught in a difficult place. He's always shown love and respect for his mother, choosing to honor her in a way that protects her memory but doesn't reopen old wounds. At the same time, he's tried to guide the monarchy into a new era, one that leaves the past behind. But now, because of Edward's honesty, William may have to look at those painful truths again. And he might need to decide how much of Diana's full story he's willing to accept and speak about. That decision will not only affect how the public sees him, but it could also influence whether people believe the royal family is truly ready to grow and change. Then there's Prince Harry, who has been the most outspoken when it comes to Diana's legacy. Much of his decision to walk away from royal life came from the same problems that Edward has now admitted existed. Harry has long said that his mother wasn't treated right, that her voice was often ignored or silenced. Edward's words might feel like long overdue validation to Harry, proof that someone else in the royal circle finally understands. But at the same time, this might make the divide between Harry and the rest of the family even wider. Because if Edward, who has always kept his head down, avoided the spotlight, and stood by the institution, can finally speak up, how much longer can the others stay quiet? Still, while these family struggles are deeply emotional, there's something even larger happening here. Edward's revelation isn't just affecting the people within the palace. It's sending ripples far beyond the royal gates. And that leads us to the bigger question. What could this truth change for the royal family's future? Everyone's reaction to Edward's revelation, Edward's choice to finally speak up, has added more pressure to a royal system already showing signs of weakness. Today's world demands truth and openness, and the royal family is struggling to keep pace with that shift. So, when someone like Edward, who has always been known for being calm, respectful, and quiet, decides to address the painful truths surrounding Diana's life, people can't help but wonder what else might be hidden behind the palace walls. Some people believe his openness could be the very thing the monarchy needs. By admitting the flaws of the past, the royal family might finally show the public they're capable of learning, changing, and becoming better. To many, that kind of honesty is a step forward, but not everyone sees it that way. Others think Edward may have crossed a line, one that could make it harder for the royals to protect the image they've built so carefully over the years. No matter which side people stand on, one fact is now impossible to ignore. The royal family can't keep pretending the past didn't happen. Once Edward's words were shared with the public, they quickly spread like wildfire. The headlines came fast, and every major news outlet jumped on the story. Talk shows replayed his statements over and over, analyzing each sentence. Journalists filled columns with guesses about how the palace might react and what it could mean for the monarchy's future. At the same time, social media lit up with conversation. In today's fast-paced digital world, where every public statement is picked apart and discussed instantly. Edward's comments became a big moment. People had strong reactions. Some felt that Edward had finally said what needed to be said. For years, they praised him for being real and brave, for shining a light on the truth that had been tucked away for too long. To these people, his honesty was powerful and healing. It gave dignity to Diana's pain and held the royal system accountable. But not everyone welcomed his words. Others believed he was digging up old pain that should have been left in the past. Critics began asking tough questions. Why did he wait until now to speak? Was he trying to fix how people see him? Was there something going on inside the palace that made him speak out? Or was he genuinely trying to help by sharing a truth that needed to be heard? Even the press came under fire. For decades, the media played a huge role in shaping Diana's public image. Some stories made her look like a helpless victim, while others painted her as someone who brought trouble to the family. But Edward's version didn't follow any of those old scripts, and he didn't try to make Diana look like a saint, and he didn't defend how the royals treated her either. Instead, he told a deeper, more complex story that forced many journalists to reflect on the way they had reported on Diana for years. Still, the biggest reaction didn't come from TV or newspapers. It came from everyday people online. Within moments, users were posting videos, comments, and personal thoughts, hashtags related to Diana, hidden royal secrets, and the demand for transparency spread everywhere. Many young people, some of whom weren't even born when Diana passed, began to talk about her again. They started comparing her experience to Meghan Markle and wondering out loud whether the royal family can survive if it keeps making the same painful mistakes over and over again. So far, the palace hasn't made any official response, but even without a single word from them, the impact of Edward's statement has been impossible to ignore. The entire public conversation took a fresh turn, and once again, Diana's name is being spoken everywhere with raw emotion, fierce debates, and divided feelings. Edward didn't just say a few harmless words. He reopened a story many thought had been quietly put to rest. His choice to break his silence after so many years feels like a turning point in how the royal family handles uncomfortable truths. For a long time, their way of surviving tough times was to say nothing. Believing silence kept their reputation safe. But Edward's decision showed something different. Staying quiet doesn't make problems disappear. It only delays the moment when truth comes knocking. His honesty brought Diana's pain back into focus. It made people take a closer look at how slowly the royal household has grown and how much someone gives up to be part of that world. And suddenly, new questions started floating around. Did Diana really have to go through all that pain? Was there a way she could have been better protected? Would the monarchy be stronger today if they had treated her differently back then? Edward's words might even open the way for other royals to step forward with their own truths. If someone as reserved and loyal as him is now ready to share his thoughts, does that mean more voices will soon follow? Or will too much honesty shake the very roots of the monarchy? One thing is crystal clear. Diana's story still echoes through the halls of the palace. Her life continues to shape how people view the royals, and even now, her memory stirs deep emotions. Because of Edward, her journey is being looked at again, and many are now wondering, was speaking out really worth what it could cost? People reacted in all kinds of ways to what Edward said. Some admired him, saying it was courageous of him to finally say what had been buried for years. To them, his honesty was refreshing, a much-needed light in a story clouded by secrecy. They felt it was about time someone from the inside admitted the past wasn't perfect. But others didn't feel the same. They thought Edward was trying to shift the story, maybe even soften the truth to protect the family's image. They believed his version made Diana's pain seem smaller, less serious. But Edward didn't speak up to gain praise, and he wasn't trying to hide anything. He simply wanted to tell the part of the story that hadn't been told. He knew his words would stir emotions, create disagreements, and spark opinions. But in his heart, staying silent any longer felt wrong. He believed the truth, no matter how hard, deserved to be shared. Inside the palace, not everyone felt the same way. For King Charles, Edward's words brought a mixture of feelings. Charles had spent so many years trying to rebuild his image after the fallout from his marriage to Diana. He had already faced harsh public judgment for what happened between them. What Edward said brought both comfort and pain to Charles. On one hand, it showed that he too had his own struggles, that his story wasn't black and white either. But on the other hand, it brought back memories he had been trying to forget. It forced him to relive moments that had already wounded him deeply. And for Prince William, the impact was especially tough. As the next in line to the throne, William has always tried to hold on to his mother's legacy while helping the family move forward. But Edward's words pulled him back into memories he'd been trying to balance for years. He found himself wondering how much truth is too much. How do you honor someone's memory without pulling your family back into painful history? Prince Harry's reaction was much stronger. He felt that Edward's words made Diana's pain seem smaller than it really was. To Harry, that just made the distance between him and his family feel even wider. But Edward didn't take back anything. He wasn't speaking to be liked, and he wasn't trying to clear his name. He just wanted to share his truth, to help everyone see the full picture. He believed that talking openly, even when it hurt, could be a step toward healing. Edward's words didn't just start arguments or heated discussions. They made people start asking deeper questions. If this was only the beginning of being honest about Diana's life, what else might still be hidden? And now that the family is being pushed toward more truth-telling, can they stay together through it? Like the kind of moment when someone in a family finally says what everyone's been thinking, but no one dared to speak. Edward's gentle, sincere words touched old wounds that many had tried to bury. For King Charles, it was especially painful. It brought back the haunting days when he was judged by the world and buried in shame. Every time someone called Diana the people's princess, it made Charles's own image harder to repair. Edward's honesty stirred all of that up again. And while it opened the door for healing, it also reminded everyone just how deep the past still runs. Edward's recent statements added something new to the story people thought they already knew. His words revealed layers that had been hidden for years, parts of Diana's life that weren't spoken about publicly. As soon as Edward spoke out, the reactions within the family took different paths. Prince William, who always focused on moving forward while carrying the weight of his future crown, took a more balanced view. He felt Edward's comments might help create some kind of peace and understanding between honoring the pain his mother went through and also recognizing the royal family's part in that pain. He wasn't trying to forget the past, but he also believed they couldn't be trapped by it forever.